Okay. So this is the fourth, fifth time I'm trying to do this, and every time I try to record this video, I get angry. I'm gonna try not to get angry. Yeah. First of all, I apologize for the camera, the light, and the shower hair, and the... I was going through my morning ritual here at my boyfriend's place, looking at YouTube comments. I do that every morning because then it's out of the way, and I get most of the comments during our night because that's when the Americans are awake. So it's my morning ritual, and sometimes I get comments that tell me how to talk about Asperger's syndrome. I get these comments saying, don't use the word aspie, it's offensive. And I don't think it's offensive. I never thought it was. I was introduced to the word by Tony Atwood like 5 years ago. And his way of talking about Asperger's syndrome is very positive. It's very, look to the future, hope. People are getting more knowledge, your lives are going to get easier because people are going to get more knowledge and everything will be good. Congratulations, you're an aspie, is what he says to people when they get the diagnosis. Congratulations. And I do think it should be, congratulations, you're an aspie. Because it means that you are one out of a minority of people whose brain structure gives them a higher probability to have an innate set of skills that other people don't have. And that innate set of skills is a set of skills that companies are starting to realize are very, very useful. Which means that we are now getting job opportunities that we didn't get before. We're getting job opportunities that, frankly, people without autism aren't getting to the same degree. Sorry, it's cold. I have to sneeze. The more we learn about autism, the more we realize that there are positive things that come along with it, and that those positive things are now emerging because we are treating people on the spectrum better. We are treating them better according to their needs, not according to society's needs. And that's the way to do it. So I don't think that being an aspie is negative. I think it should be something very positive. And that, when I use the word, is what it brings to me. If it's not completely neutral, it's something positive. And it always has been for me ever since I learned that word. And it will continue to be. Because that's how I view it. And when people tell me, haha, you're an aspie, you suck, I think, you don't know shit. Now, there are two groups of people that tell me not to use the word aspie. Some of them are other people on the spectrum, and when they say it, basically my reaction is, you use the words you want to use about it, and I'll use the words I want to use about it. We are completely equal in our ability to choose how we want to talk about our own diagnoses. And that's fine. That's good. You do your thing, and I'll do mine. And best wishes. No hard feelings there. I get frustrated a little bit because they use the same argument that the other group of people do. And I feel like that argument sucks, and I'll get into that. So that frustrates me a little bit, but because they are people who actually live it, who actually have the same diagnosis, I feel like, you know what, I'm not even gonna argue. I'm just gonna say that I use the words I use, and you can use the words you want to use, and live and let live. And that's generally how I feel. And I don't get offended when people say she has Asperger's syndrome rather than she's an aspie. I don't get offended at that. I don't think anything at all. I just read the words, I read the meaning, and it's like, she's a person with Asperger's syndrome. She's an aspie. It's the same thing. There's no value that I put onto this set of words. I don't get offended the other way. I get frustrated when it is the second group of people telling me not to use the word aspie, and that is people who are not on the spectrum. They are either professionals, or they are parents or partners or whatnot. They're people who have someone with autism in their lives, and they are so angry at the word aspie, and they are so angry at the word autistic. And here's their argument. You are defining the person by their diagnosis, by their disorder. And that's where I get frustrated. Because why shouldn't I? When I say I'm an aspie, I say, first of all, I'm a person with Asperger's syndrome. But in that, being a person with Asperger's syndrome, being an aspie, I realize that having Asperger's syndrome, my brain structure is different than people who are not on the spectrum. Because my brain structure is different, my life is affected. Positively and negatively, sometimes more negatively than positively. Whatever. But it's affected. My life is affected. Who I become is affected by having Asperger's syndrome. Because having Asperger's syndrome means that I've had certain experiences in my life, certain traumas, certain perceptions of the world that I probably would not have had if my brain structure had been different. Certainly my perception of the world would have been different. I might have had the same traumas. I don't know. I mean, people without autism get bullied and all of that shit too. I mean, yeah. But my perception and certain experiences of mine, I probably would not have had if I didn't have Asperger's syndrome. So having Asperger's syndrome has influenced throughout my life and will continue to influence throughout the rest of my life who I am and who I will become. So it's a part of me. That is not to say that I define all of me by my diagnosis. No, of course not. I am more than an aspie. I am also other things. I'm a daughter. I'm a girlfriend. I'm a songwriter. I'm a dreamer. I'm a thinker. I'm slightly neurotic. I'm anxious. I'm depressive. I have suicidal thoughts that I can set the clock by. And I will use any word that makes those things easier to communicate. And that's what aspie is to me. It's a word that shortens, I'm a person with Asperger's syndrome. I'm an aspie. It's shorter. It's easier to say. I don't put any value necessarily into that, but it's shorter, it's easier to say, it communicates my meaning effectively. There you go. And if there was a word that meant I am a person who has suffered from suicidal thoughts for most of my life, if there was a short, neat little word like aspie that meant that, I would use that word too. Why? Because it's easy, it's neat, and frankly, being a person who has had suicidal thoughts for most of my life has affected who I am. It's a part of me, like Asperger's syndrome is, like songwriting, like like any other part of my personality. It's a part of who I am. And frankly, when I look back, the only reason that having Asperger's syndrome has been a negative ever has been people who have not accepted me, people who have tried to change me into being normal, and people who have told me to be ashamed of being me. People who have told me to be ashamed of my brain structure. And then we're back to why the word aspie is so offensive. And I used to not be able to really understand why when people who are not on the spectrum tell me that I shouldn't use the word aspie because it defines the person by their diagnosis. I used to not be able to really understand why that gave me a little ugh in my stomach. But then, replying to a comment today, it came to me. And this is the part of the video where I get angry, because this is all the pent-up frustration. Trying to just say the words. So, when you tell me that defining myself by my diagnosis, and I think they get offended because they think I define myself solely as an aspie. But that's ridiculous, of course, because nobody does that. Nobody. But when you tell me that it's offensive to do so, then you're telling me, and it comes across really in the words as well, you're defining yourself by your diagnosis, you're defining yourself by your disorder. You're telling me that Asperger's syndrome, that autism is wrong. You are telling me that it is something to be ashamed of. And boy, that is a train I am never getting on. Ever. I am proud of who I am. I am proud of having come through the struggles I've come through. I'm proud of having achieved the things I've achieved in my life, with society limiting me the way that it does. I'm proud of surviving in a society that is so not made for people with brain structures like mine. I'm not ashamed of being an aspie. I never will be. And I never should have been. Ever. Not for a day. The only reason it's tough to have autism is because of people telling us we're wrong. Is because of people trying to change us into fitting in to their perception of what we should be. We shouldn't be. We should be whatever the hell we want to. I mean, as long as we're not harming people, as long as we're not going out raping and murdering and pillaging and whatever, as long as we're just trying to lead normal, happy lives for us, why would that be wrong? What is so innately wrong with being aspie? Nothing. But for some reason, in your mind, it's wrong to define myself as who I am. Because it affects who I am. It really does, and it always will. Just as everything else affects who I am. Being aspie is a part of me. And I'm allowed to acknowledge that it is. I should, actually. Because, frankly, the best thing that you can have as a person, and one thing that you're almost forced to have as a person with autism, with ASD, is some self-reflection. And when I'm forced to have self-reflection in my life, when I am forced to reflect on everything I do and everything I think and how it affects other people, then, by gosh, I realize that having Asperger's, being an aspie, being autistic, being on the spectrum, as I am, it affects my life. It affects who I am. It affects how I think. It affects how I do things. So when I say I'm an aspie, I'm saying that I acknowledge that it's a part of me. And I should not be ashamed of that. I should not separate my diagnosis from who I am. That would be like trying to separate my brain structure from who I am. And that's impossible. It's impossible. You try. It would be like trying to tell me not to define myself as a homosexual if I was, or not to define myself as a heterosexual, or bisexual, or transgender, or... It's a part of who I am. If you tell a homosexual person, you shouldn't define yourself as a homosexual, because then it's like you're defining yourself as your sexuality. No! You are using a word that means I am attracted to the same sex. And when I say I'm an aspie, I am saying I am a person with a certain type of brain structure, and that's it. And even if I define myself as a person with that type of brain structure, that is not wrong, that is not offensive. It never will be. It becomes offensive because you define my brain structure as being wrong, as being a disorder. I'm not going to use the word dysfunction, disorder, or even condition about my brain structure, about the way my brain works, or about who I am. It is not a condition. It is not something that is wrong with me. I'm an aspie. This is who I am, and I'm worth as much as any other person in the world. And frankly, parallels could be drawn to a lot of words, a lot of prejudices, a lot of social, historical, political situations. And frankly, if I went into any of that, it might diminish what I'm saying, so I'll leave it at that. You don't get to tell me to jump on your train whereon the philosophy is that I don't get to define myself the way I am. I am me. I'm not going to change because society wants me to. I change what I want to change to make my life easier. I make the decisions about where I want to go in my life. And frankly, being an aspie is going to get a heck of a lot easier the day society realizes, the day neurotypicals realize that just because we're a minority doesn't mean we shouldn't have the circumstances in our lives that means that we can succeed. Gosh, those parallels are obvious, aren't they? Don't tell me that being an aspie or using that word is offensive. You want to use the word you want to use, and that's fine. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not even going to call you out. I'm not going to say anything about what connotations you should have in the words you use. But you don't get to tell me how I talk about my life, about my brain structure, about who I am. I choose that. Just like you choose the words you want to use about who you are. It's very simple. I don't think I can make this video without getting a little, just a little bit irritated. I think I'm done trying to improve on this, and I'm just going to put it out there, and people can get offended, and they can do whatever, but this is how I feel about it, and you can disagree all you want. That's fine. Disagreements are going to happen, and if they didn't, there would be nothing to talk about. I don't expect people to agree with me, necessarily. But this is how I feel, this is how I think about it, and that's that. Yeah. Done. I hope everyone is happy and has a good time, and I will see you next time, whenever that is. My January is going to be a little bit booked, so you might not hear from me for another month or so, depending on whether or not I suddenly get a whim to make a video about something. But this is it for now, and yeah. See ya. Smile, it's contagious, and just keep swimming.